My mom kicked me out of the house because of my stepfather's lies. But what I revealed left them speechless. I stood on the doorstep, clutching the handle of an old sports bag containing just a laptop, 2 sweaters, a charger, and a pair of socks. The door slammed behind me, and I heard her shout, "You're no longer my son." The words cut like glass, but I didn't cry. In my jeans pocket, a crumpled piece of paper rustled, a letter from an investor I'd accidentally found on my stepfather Oleg's laptop. It was the first piece of evidence that he wasn't who he seemed. I knew this was just the beginning, and the truth I'd uncover would make them regret it. The cold autumn wind hit my face, but anger burned in my chest. Oleg thought he'd gotten rid of me by framing me in front of Mom, accusing me of stealing her savings. He convinced her I was troubled, that I'd squandered her money on nonsense. Mom believed him, not me. But I wasn't going to give up. Every step away from the house was a step toward revenge. I felt a strength awakening in me, not blind rage, but cold determination. I'd return not as a victim, but as the one who'd shatter his lies. I knew the truth was my weapon, and I'd use it without mercy. Oleg thought he was smarter, but he didn't know who he was dealing with. I walked into the darkness, already forming a plan in my head. Step 1. Gather evidence. Step 2. Make him pay. I imagined his face when Mom learned the truth, and that thought warmed me in the cold night. I wasn't just going to clear my name. I'd destroy his world. In my bag was the laptop where I'd saved a screenshot of that letter. It was my first trump card, but I knew I needed more. Oleg was cautious, but I was patient. I already saw cracks in his mask, nervous glances when I asked about money, his hasty excuses. He underestimated me, and that would be his biggest mistake. I'd go to the end, even if it destroyed everything I loved. I crashed on my friend's old couch, which reeked of cigarettes and cheap coffee. Memories swirled in my head about how Oleg entered our lives. 3 years ago, after Mom's divorce from Dad, she was vulnerable, lonely. Oleg appeared like a savior, helping with repairs, bringing flowers, joking in a way that made her laugh for the first time in ages. He seemed perfect, but the last 6 months, his behavior changed. His smile became forced, he avoided my gaze. I noticed how he hid his phone when I walked into the kitchen. Once, I asked why he was always going on business trips when Mom said he worked from home. He brushed it off, but his hands trembled. Then I noticed Mom's gold earrings, a keepsake from Grandma, were gone. She said she'd lost them, but I saw Oleg rummaging through her jewelry box. I started noting these details, a changed password on her laptop, his late-night calls in the bathroom, strange browser tabs he quickly closed. Each detail was a crack in his perfect mask. I didn't yet know what he was planning, but I sensed something dark lurk behind his charming words. I decided to watch him closely. One evening, I saw him toss a paper into the trash. I retrieved it, a receipt for a money transfer, not for repairs, but to some fund. Mom never donated such sums. I photographed the receipt and stored it in the cloud. Then I checked his social media, old posts, photos, comments. I found a picture of him posing with expensive watches, though he told Mom he was barely getting by. I saved that photo. Each moment gave me confidence I was on the right track. Oleg was cautious, but not flawless. I recalled how he insisted Mom give him access to her bank account. I hadn't paid attention then, but now it seemed suspicious. I started listing his odd actions, late returns home, closed doors during calls, his nervousness when I asked about Mom's finances. These details were like puzzle pieces I was assembling to see his true face. I knew I needed evidence, but I felt the truth was close. Oleg thought I was just an angry son, but I was ready to prove he was a thief. Mom always trusted Oleg. He knew how to calm her, convince her everything was under control. She looked at him like a hero, but I started noticing inconsistencies. She said her savings, 300,000 hryvnias, went to renovating the dacha. I went to check. The dacha was abandoned. Cracked windows, peeling paint, grass up to my waist. No renovations. I photographed everything and sent it to Mom. Her reply was sharp. Mind your own business. Her voice in the message felt foreign, like she was parroting someone else. I recalled other odd things. How Oleg insisted Mom give him access to her bank account. How he jokingly suggested I study abroad to not interfere with their happiness. One evening, I saw him toss an envelope with the fund's logo into the trash. I retrieved it. A contract for a money transfer, not for repairs, but for charity. Mom never donated such amounts. I felt my blood boil. I watched him closer, noticed how he got nervous when I lingered in their room, how he avoided money talks. Once, I overheard him whispering on the phone about secure transfer guarantees. I recorded it on my phone, hiding behind the door. Each inconsistency was a puzzle piece forming the picture of his deceit. I checked his stories. He claimed to work in IT, but I never saw any projects. Instead, he went on client meetings, returning with expensive purchases. I photographed his new leather briefcase. Mom couldn't afford that. I also noticed he started avoiding me, like he sensed I knew something. Mom, meanwhile, grew colder, echoing his words. You're just jealous. But I didn't give up. I found a plane ticket to Cyprus, a place known for offshore accounts, in his jacket. Mom never mentioned such a trip. I photographed it and added it to my evidence. Every step Oleg took left traces, and I collected them like a hunter. I knew he was hiding something big, and I was ready to expose it, even if it broke Mom's heart. I knew I needed proof to make Mom believe. One day, Oleg left his laptop open when he went to shower. On the screen was his email with a letter from an investor. I snapped a photo. It mentioned an offshore account transfer and anonymity guarantees. I didn't read it all, but it was enough to know Oleg was stealing. I Googled what offshore accounts were and learned they're used to hide money. Mom didn't even know the term. I copied the sender's address and searched online. I found a forum where people discuss scammers using charity funds to launder money. Oleg's name wasn't mentioned, but I felt he was involved. I checked his social media, old posts, comments, photos. I found a picture of him with luxury watches, though he told Mom he was barely scraping by. I saved it. Then I recalled him mentioning a bank contact. I noted the name and searched online. I found a LinkedIn profile. He worked at the bank handling Mom's account. It couldn't be a coincidence. I tracked his routes. He often went to the same business center. I followed him one day and saw him hand an envelope to a man. I photographed them from afar, unsure what was in it. I also found a lawyer's business card in his car, specializing in offshore matters. I photographed it and added it to my evidence. Each piece was a brick in my wall against Oleg. I knew one letter wasn't enough, so I contacted a hacker from the forum who agreed to check Oleg's email. He sent me more emails about transfers, with sums matching Mom's savings. I realized Oleg wasn't just stealing, he'd built a whole scheme. But I was patient. I saved everything in the cloud, made backups. Oleg thought I was just a kid he could fool, but I already saw his true face. I was ready for the next step, make him nervous, force a mistake. I knew the truth was on my side, and it gave me strength to keep going. I tried talking to Mom. I showed her the dacha photos, asked where her money went. She exploded. You always hated Oleg. You want to ruin us. Her words hurt, but I saw Oleg standing nearby, silently watching. His eyes gleamed, like he was enjoying it. He whispered something to her, and she kicked me out of the kitchen. That night, I overheard them arguing in the bedroom, not about money, but about me. Oleg called me unstable, saying I needed help. I realized he was trying to isolate me. The next day, I found a strange notebook in my room with his handwriting, notes about investments, account numbers, dates. I photographed it and stored it in the cloud. Mom didn't believe me, but I wasn't stopping. I noticed Oleg watching me, checking if I was home, glancing at my phone when I left it on the table. Once, I accidentally left my phone with a photo of a transfer receipt open. He saw it and snapped, "What's this?" I calmly replied, "Just curious about that fund." His face paled. I knew I'd hit a nerve. Mom, though, grew colder, echoing Oleg's words, "You're jealous of our happiness." I tried explaining, but she wouldn't listen. That night, I overheard Oleg on the phone. "He's digging. We need to do something." I recorded it. His every move confirmed my suspicions. I noticed he started collecting the mail so I wouldn't see it. But I already had copies of documents from the trash, mentioning a charity fund, receiving Mom's money. I contacted a friend who knew a lawyer and asked them to check the fund. They confirmed it was a front. I realized Oleg was panicking. His attempts to isolate me only fueled my resolve. I started setting a trap, gathered all evidence in a folder, made copies, sent them to a friend. I knew a direct fight with Mom wouldn't work. I needed ironclad proof. Oleg thought I was weak, but I was already a hunter stalking his prey. Every move brought me closer to my goal. I was ready for war, and I knew I'd win. I contacted a friend who works at a bank. I asked him to check Mom's account, knowing it wasn't entirely legal. He agreed to take a look. In 6 months, 300,000 hryvnias had vanished from her account, funneled to a charity fund, registered to a front. My friend dug deeper and found the fund's address matched an office where Oleg once worked. It wasn't a coincidence. I started tracking Oleg, noting where he went, who he met. One day, I saw him hand an envelope to a man in a cafe. I photographed them from a distance, unsure what was in it. I also checked his car when he left it unlocked. In the glove box, I found another contract with the same fund and a lawyer's card specializing in offshore accounts. I photographed everything and added it to my evidence. I contacted a hacker from the forum who agreed to check Oleg's email. He sent me emails about offshore transfers with sums matching Mom's savings. I realized Oleg wasn't just stealing, he'd built a scheme. But I was patient. I saved everything in the cloud, made backups. I also tracked his routes. He frequently visited a business center where, I learned, the fund's office was located. I photographed him there with the same man from the cafe. I found another document in the trash, an invoice for consulting services for a large sum. The consultant's name matched the lawyer's card. Each piece was a brick in my wall. I noticed Oleg avoiding direct talks with me, but his nervousness betrayed him. Once, I accidentally left my laptop open with a receipt photo. He saw it and snapped. "Where'd you get that?" I calmly said, "Found it." His panic was clear. I knew he was scared. I started setting a trap, gathered all evidence in a folder, recorded conversations where he mentioned transfers. I also contacted a lawyer through a friend to learn how to file a fraud report. The lawyer said my evidence was enough, but I wanted Mom to see the truth herself. I was ready for the next step, knowing Oleg would soon make a fatal mistake. I decided to play smarter. I called Oleg and said I wanted to reconcile. I invited him to a cafe, where I accidentally showed a printout of a transfer provided by my friend. "Where'd you get this?" His voice shook. I smiled, just curious where Mom's money's going. He stood abruptly and left, muttering I'd regret it. But I saw his fear. That night, I got a text from an unknown number. "Stay away, or it'll get worse." I knew it was him. It was my first victory. I started setting a trap, saved all evidence on a flash drive, made copies, sent them to a friend. I installed a call recording app. Once, I accidentally left my phone with a recording of his threats on the table. He heard it and paled. I calmly said, "Just a mistake, right?" His silence spoke volumes. I knew he was panicking, making him vulnerable. I kept watching, noticed he started collecting mail to hide letters. But I already had copies of documents from the trash. I found another transfer receipt in his car. I photographed it and added it to my evidence. I contacted a lawyer who confirmed these were solid proof of fraud. But I didn't rush to the police. I wanted Mom to see it all. I spread rumors among mutual friends that something's off with the money. Oleg heard and grew more nervous. Once, I accidentally left my laptop open with an offshore email. He saw it and tried to explain, but I calmly said, "Mom will find this interesting." His panic grew, and I knew he'd crack soon. I prepared the final blow, gathered all evidence in a folder, recorded conversations mentioning transfers and anonymity. I also got another email from the hacker about security guarantees. I saved everything in the cloud, made copies. Oleg thought I was weak, but I was a step ahead. I knew he'd slip, and I was ready to use it. My goal wasn't just to expose him, but to make him destroy himself. I felt the climax nearing, and I was ready. Mom called the next day. She screamed that I was blackmailing Oleg, that I'd ruined her life. I tried explaining, showing the dacha photos, receipts, but she hung up. That night, I got another text. "This is your last mistake." I knew it was Oleg. He was panicking, getting careless. I checked his car again when he left it by the house. In the glove box, I found another fund contract and a lawyer's card for offshore dealings. I photographed everything and added it to my evidence. I noticed he avoided me more, but his nervousness gave him away. Once, I overheard him on the phone. "We need to speed up the transfers. He knows something." I recorded it. The tension was rising, but I felt in control. I contacted a friend who knew a lawyer and asked them to check the fund. They confirmed it was a front for money laundering. I found another document in the trash, an invoice for consulting services for a large sum. The consultant's name matched the card. I added it to my folder. Oleg grew careless, left his laptop open, where I saw another transfer email. I photographed it. He started collecting mail to hide letters, but I already had enough evidence. I got more emails from the hacker about offshore accounts. I saved everything in the cloud, made copies. I spread rumors among friends that something's wrong with the money. Oleg heard and panicked more. Once, I accidentally left my laptop open with an offshore email. He saw it and tried to explain, but I calmly said, "Mom will find this interesting." His panic was clear. I knew he'd crack. I prepared the final blow, gathered all evidence in a folder, recorded conversations mentioning transfers. I contacted a lawyer who said the evidence was enough for a report, but I wanted Mom to see the truth. I felt the climax near. Oleg thought I was weak, but I was a hunter. Every move brought me closer. I was ready for war, and I knew I'd win. I was no longer the scared kid kicked out of home. I gathered all evidence: photos, screenshots, statements, recordings. I contacted a lawyer through a friend who confirmed it was enough for a fraud report. But I didn't just want to punish Oleg. I wanted Mom to see his true face. I stopped fearing her anger or his threats. I became a strategist, calculating every move. I prepared a folder with evidence, printed emails, statements, recorded his threats. I made copies of all documents and sent them to a friend for safekeeping. I knew the truth was on my side, and it gave me strength. I was no longer a victim. I was a hunter. I spread rumors among friends that something's off with the money. Oleg heard and panicked. I noticed him making mistakes, leaving documents, forgetting to close his laptop. I used it, photographing everything. Once, I recorded him on the phone saying, "We need to speed up. He's digging." That recording was my ace. I got another email from the hacker about offshore accounts. I saved everything in the cloud. I prepared for the endgame, gathered all evidence in a folder, made a presentation for Mom. I knew a direct fight wouldn't work. I needed ironclad proof. I stopped doubting myself, feeling my confidence grow. Oleg thought I was weak, but I was 2 steps ahead. I talked to Mom's friends, hinting Oleg might be dishonest. It made him more nervous. Once, I accidentally left my laptop open with a transfer email. He saw it and tried to explain, but I calmly said, "Mom will find this interesting." His panic was my victory. I contacted a lawyer who said the evidence was enough for court, but I wanted Mom to choose. I stopped fearing her reaction. I knew the truth was stronger than her blind trust. I prepared for the conversation that would change everything. I was no longer the one who could be kicked out. I was the one who'd restore justice. Every piece of evidence in my folder was a bullet, and I was ready to fire. I invited Mom and Oleg to a talk at a cafe. They came, thinking I'd beg to return. Instead, I placed a folder before them. Calmly, without emotion, I explained everything. How Oleg siphoned money, framed me, lied for years. I showed statements, emails, recordings of his threats. I laid out documents one by one: receipts, contracts, offshore email screenshots. Mom was silent, her face paling with each word. Oleg tried to deny it, but his voice shook. I played a recording of him saying, "We need to speed up. He's digging." His eyes darted. He tried to explain, but I calmly continued. I showed photos of the unrenovated dacha and statements of her savings going to a fund. I explained how I found the lawyer's card, checked the fund's address. Each piece was a blow. Mom looked at the documents, then at Oleg. Her hands trembled. Oleg tried to blame me, but I played another recording, his threat from an unknown number. I said, "You stole her money, not me." Mom sharply stopped him. "Get out." Her voice was quiet but firm. He stood and left without looking back. Mom hugged me, and I felt the weight lift off my shoulders. She cried, whispering, "How could I not see?" I didn't blame her. She was his victim. I gave her the truth. And myself. That day, I realized I'd grown stronger. I was no longer afraid. I gathered all evidence not just to expose Oleg, but to protect Mom. The lawyer said we could file a report, but Mom wanted to handle it herself first. She gave me the house keys back. Oleg vanished from our lives, leaving only debts and lies. I knew he'd try to flee, but I passed copies of the evidence to a police contact. I didn't know if they'd jail him, but I knew he'd pay. Mom started rebuilding her finances, and I helped. I was no longer a victim. I was the one who restored justice. Every piece in that folder was my battle, and I won the war. Mom looked at me with pride, and I knew this was just the start. We grew closer than ever. And Oleg? He was left alone with his lies.